Hello M5 students! Welcome back to our online class. Today, we're just going to review about the digestive system and the respiratory system. We're going to review them by watching the videos again. Let's begin with the digestive system.
How are you, students? I hope you're doing fine. You're not sick. You're okay. I'm teacher Hannah and I'm your health teacher, of course. Nothing's changed. So we're doing this right now because of the pandemic that we are facing. We won't be able to go in the school to study and to teach you. So the school decided to do the online teaching and studying. We will continue doing this for about 6 weeks, but for my subject, I will only teach you twice. That will be today, May 20 and June 17. So the time for each class or session is 90 minutes. So within that 90 minutes, I will discuss to you the lesson, I will give you an activity, and then a quiz. So for the whole term, you will be studying about digestive system, respiratory system, circulatory system, and human rights. But for this online class, we will only tackle about digestive system and the respiratory system, their functions, parts, diseases, and how to take care of these systems. So for today, we're going to start with the digestive system. But before that, disclaimer, these informations are for educational purposes only because I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, as I always say to you. I am a teacher. It is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, and it should not be interpreted to contain treatment recommendation. Now let's start. The digestive system. Okay, let's define or identify the function of the digestive system. The human digestive system is a series of organs that converts food into essential nutrients that are absorbed into the body and eliminates unused waste materials. It chops and chews food, store and then digests it, eliminates waste products, and passes the nutrients into the major gland, the liver, which are essential to our body. If the digestive system shuts down, the body cannot be nourished. So the digestive system begins at the empeslaria. What is this word? So M stands for mouth, P stands for pharynx, E stands for esophagus, S stomach, another S small intestine, LA is for the large intestine, RE is the rectum, and A is for the anus. The entire system from mouth to anus is about 30 feet or 9 meters long. Digestive system is also known as gastrointestinal tract. The GI tract can be divided into an upper and lower part. So for the upper part, it contains mouth, pharynx, esophagus, and stomach. For the lower part, contains small and large intestine. The organs of the GI tract are covered by two layers of muscles that enable peristalsis. When we say peristalsis, it is a wave-like muscle contractions that moves food to different processing stations in the digestive tract. So, generally, this is how the digestive tract works or functions. Let us now talk about the parts of the digestive system. first part is the mouth. Mouth is also known as oral cavity, and it is where the digestion process starts. The food intake in human being is through mouth. This process of taking food is called ingestion. Chewing food is very necessary for proper digestion as digestion processes starts in the mouth itself. During chewing, food mixes with salivary enzyme which is called amylase. Amylase is a digestive enzyme that converts starch in food into smaller carbohydrate molecules and turn the food into moist lump called bolus. And bolus is a ball-like mixture of food and saliva that forms in the mouth during the process of chewing. Inside the mouth are accessory organs that aid in the digestion of food. These are the teeth, tongue, and salivary glands. Now let's talk about these three accessories of the mouth. Let us talk about the teeth, which is the first accessory of the mouth. Each person has 32 permanent teeth, and these are made for cutting and grinding food into small pieces. This process is called mechanically process. Each tooth is made of a bone-like substance. These are the dentin and enamel. Dentin provides support to the enamel, and the enamel is the hardest substance in the body, and the white layer of the tooth that covers and protects the dentin. Teeth are living organs and contain blood vessels and nerves under the dentin in a soft region known as the pulp. Pulp transmits sensations such as pain and senses of temperature and touch in the mouth. It supports and maintains the formation of the dentin. It also supplies blood to the dentin. That is for the mouth. And the second accessory of the mouth is the tongue. Tongue is a small organ made up of several pairs of muscles covered in thin, bumpy, and skin-like layer. The outside of the tongue contains many rough papillae. When we say papillae, these are found on the tip and side of the tongue that gives the tongue its rough texture. They have taste buds on their upper surface which can distinguish the 5 tastes: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. It also helps to push food toward the posterior part of the mouth for swallowing. Third accessory of the mouth is the salivary glands. These are accessory organs that produce a watery secretion known as saliva or the amylase. Saliva helps to moisten the food and begins the digestion of carbohydrates. The body also uses saliva to lubricate food as it passes through the mouth, pharynx, and esophagus. So those are the parts or the accessories of the mouth. Let's proceed to the second part of the digestive system, which is the pharynx. That also known as throat, which is also part of the respiratory system. The pharynx is responsible for the passing of masses of chewed food from the mouth to the esophagus. So as the air from the nasal cavity passes through the pharynx on its way to the larynx and eventually the lungs. It contains a fluff of tissue known as the epiglottis, which is located behind the tongue. Epiglottis is a leaf-shaped flap or of cartilage. It seals off the windpipe during eating so that the food will not accidentally inhaled during eating. That is the pharynx. From the pharynx, the bolus moves into the esophagus, which is the third part of the digestive system, and it's about 20 centimeters long. The function of esophagus is to pass the food from the mouth to the stomach. It begins at the pharynx, passes through the chest, and ends at the opening of the stomach, and the food moves through the esophagus due to peristalsis. And at the end of the esophagus, there is a muscle there which is called lower esophageal sphincter, which controls the entrance of the food into the stomach. It opens to let the food into the stomach and then closes again to prevent the food from passing back into the esophagus. The fourth part of the digestive system is the stomach. The stomach is a hollow organ or container that holds the food. There are two fluids that are secreted by the cell of the stomach that helps the bolus for the further broken down of the food. First is the hydrochloric acid. It helps to digest food chemically and protects the body by killing the bacteria that entered the stomach in food or beverages. Second is the digestive enzyme called pepsin that breaks down proteins into smaller units called peptides. Let's now talk about the fifth part of the digestive system, which is the small intestine. Small intestine is already a part of the lower GI tract, which is located just inferior to the stomach, and it is long, thin tube that about 1 inch in diameter and about 10 feet long. The small intestine has three segments. These are the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So when we say duodenum, it is where further breakdown of the food takes place. It receives partially digested food known as chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, from the stomach. It plays a vital role in the chemical digestion of chyme in preparation for absorption in the small intestine. And the second one is the jejunum, which is responsible for absorbing nutrients from digested food into the bloodstream. And the last one is the ileum, which is to absorb vitamin B12 and whatever products of digestion were not absorbed by the jejunum. 6 is the large intestine. Large intestine is a long, thick tube which is about 2.5 inches in diameter and about 5 feet long. It absorbs water and contains many symbiotic bacteria that aid in the breaking down of waste to extract some small amounts of nutrients. It consists of three parts. These are the cecum, colon, and the rectum. So we will discuss these three parts one. Cecum. Cecum is the first part of the large intestine. It is a pouch-like passage that connects the colon to the ileum. It is where the waste enters that comes from the small intestine, and the waste passes through the colon. Colon is the longest part of the large intestine. It receives almost completely digested food from the cecum. It absorbs water and nutrients and passes waste to the rectum. The rectum is the lower part of the large intestine and it's about 15 centimeters or 6 inches long. It receives waste from the colon and stores the waste until it passes out of the body through the anus. It has also a sphincter that controls the anus and opens to let feces through the outside. So those are the three parts of the large intestine. Now let's proceed to the last part of the digestive system. This is the anus. Anus is simple as this. It eliminates feces. So that's the last part of the digestive system. Now let's proceed to the accessories of the digestive system. Accessory organs of the digestive system. So there are three accessories. These are the liver, pancreas, and the gallbladder. Let's talk about the liver. Liver is the largest internal organ of the body. It filters the blood coming from the digestive tract before passing it to the rest of the body. It makes bile. Bile is a fluid that is made and released by the liver and stored in the gallbladder. It breaks down fats into fatty acids which can be taken into the body by the digestive tract. Bile flows into the duodenum and mixes with food contents. Liver also cleans alcohol, some medicines, and poisons from the blood. Accessory is the gallbladder. Gallbladder is a small organ located just posterior to the liver. It holds the bile produced in the liver until it is needed for digesting fatty foods in the duodenum of a small. Last accessory of the digestive system, the pancreas. Pancreas is a large gland located just inferior and posterior to the stomach, and it's about 6 inches long. It has an endocrine function that releases juices directly into the bloodstream, and it has an exocrine function. It releases juices into ducts. The pancreas secretes digestive enzymes into the small intestine to complete the chemical digestions of the food. So these are the three accessories of the digestive system. Okay, we're done with the parts and functions of the digestive system already. Now let's talk about the diseases of the digestive system. Again, disclaimer, these informations are for educational purposes only. It is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, and it should not be interpreted to contain treatment recommendation. Now let's start. Let's start with inflammatory bowel diseases. Inflammatory bowel disease is an inflammation of the large intestine and in some cases other parts of the GI tract. Inflammation is a normal reaction of the immune system to injury or infection that causes swelling, redness, and pain. There are two main forms of inflammatory bowel diseases. These are the Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. First is the Crohn's disease, which affects the small intestine and the colon. It is caused by the immune system reacting to the body's own tissues. It has no cure, but a treatment can control the symptoms. Second is the ulcerative colitis, which affects the colon and the rectum. The cause of this is unknown. It can be cured with surgery. So the symptoms for these two diseases are abdominal pain, diarrhea, and weight loss. A tendency to develop the disease or the tendency to develop these diseases may be inherited. Second are the diseases of the stomach and esophagus. A layer of mucus normally protects the lining of the stomach from damage by the help of hydrochloric acid. But once the Helicobacter pylori enters the body, it may attack and weakens the lining of the stomach. The person can get this type of bacteria from food, water, and utensils. Helicobacter pylori can cause gastritis and stomach ulcers. Gastritis is an inflammation of the lining of the stomach that causes abdominal pain. Regular use of certain pain relievers and drinking too much alcohol can also contribute to gastritis. Second is the stomach ulcer. It causes severe abdominal pain and bleeding. It is a sore in the lining of the stomach. These diseases can be treated with medications. Now, let's proceed to the disease of the esophagus, which is the esophagitis. It damages the lining of the esophagus. It can occur when the sphincter between the stomach and esophagus that does not close properly. Next are the diseases of the accessory organs. First is the hepatitis. It is an inflammation of the liver. It is usually caused by a viral infection. It is spread through contaminated food or beverages, others through sexual contact. The common symptom is jaundice or yellowing of skin and the eyes. Next is the pancreatitis. It is a disease in which the pancreas becomes inflamed. It happens when the digestive enzymes are activated before they are released into the small intestine and begin attacking the pancreas. There are two types of pancreatitis. These are the acute pancreatitis and the chronic pancreatitis. First, the acute. It is a sudden inflammation that lasts for a short time. It may range from mild discomfort to a severe life-threatening illness. It can result in bleeding into the gland, infection, and cyst formation. Second is the chronic, which is mostly happen after experiencing an acute pancreatitis. It is a long-lasting inflammation. It doesn't heal and it gets worse over time and leads to permanent damage of the pancreas. It is caused by a heavy drinking of an alcohol. We also have here eating disorders. First is the anorexia nervosa. It is an irrational fear of being fat. Anorexic person develops a type of self-imposed starvation. Second is the bulimia, which is an excessive eating which followed by vomiting. So these are the diseases of the digestive system. Now let's proceed on how to take care of our digestive system. How to take care of our digestive system. First, eat a high fiber diet like avocado, cauliflower, broccoli, etc. This food helps to keep the food moving through the digestive tract and making you less likely to get constipated. Number 2, get insoluble and soluble fiber. Example of insoluble are brown rice, carrots, and celery. And for the soluble, examples are oatmeal, nuts, beans, apples, strawberry, and blueberries. Third, limit food that are high in fat, like fatty meats and fish, cheese, butter, and chocolates. Fourth, choose lean meats, like skinless chicken, red meats such as pork chops, and meat of the lamb. Fifth, incorporate probiotics into your diet, like yogurt, kimchi, milk, and soya milk. 6, eat on schedule, breakfast, exact time, lunch, exact time, dinner, exact time. 7, stay hydrated, drink 8 glasses per day, 8 glasses of water, okay? And lastly, exercise regularly, at least 3 times a week. So those are the ways for a better digestive health. We're done. If you have any question, just ask me. Hello students, how are you? Welcome back to my class, and this is teacher Hannah. So for today's lesson, we will be talking about the respiratory system. So when we say respiratory system, it's all about respiration or breathing, inhaling the oxygen and exhaling the carbon dioxide. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is the function of the respiratory system? The respiratory system is responsible for taking in the oxygen, or what we call inspiration, and expelling the carbon dioxide, or what we call expiration. So the main or the primary organs of the respiratory system are the lungs. Lungs carry out the exchange of gases as we breathe. So here in the respiratory system, red blood cells has its part. So it collects oxygen and carbon dioxide. So during the process, the RBC or red blood cell collect the carbon dioxide and transport it back to the lungs where it leaves the body when we exhale. So the human body needs oxygen to sustain itself. So decrease in oxygen is what we call hypoxia. Complete lack of oxygen is what we call anoxia. So after about 4 minutes, without oxygen, the brain cells begin dying, which can lead to the brain damage. So this is the function of the respiratory system. Let's now talk about the parts of the respiratory system. So the respiratory system is divided into two tracts. These are the upper and the lower respiratory tract. So for the upper respiratory tract, it consists the nose and nasal cavity, the pharynx, and the larynx. And for the lower, it consists the trachea, bronchi or bronchi, and the bronchioles, and the lungs. So we will discuss those parts one by one. Okay, let's start with the upper respiratory tract. First, we have the nose and the nasal cavity. So these are the first section of the body's airway. The nose is the structure of the face, which is made of cartilage, bone, muscle, and skin. It supports and protects the anterior portion of the nasal cavity. So the nasal cavity is a hollow space within the nose and the skull. So the hair and mucous lining of the nasal cavity helps to trap the dust, molds, pollens, and other environmental contaminants before reaching the inner portion of the body or before it reaches the lungs. So that is the function of the nose and the nasal cavity. The second one is the pharynx, or also known as throat. So the pharynx is the body cavity that connects the nasal and oral cavities with the larynx and the esophagus. It allows for the movement of air from the nose and mouth to the larynx in the process of breathing. It is divided into three regions. These are the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. Okay, so those are the three regions. So naso from the word nose, oro, oral or mouth, and laryng for the larynx. Okay, so as the air inhaled from the nasal cavity passes into the nasopharynx and descends through the oropharynx. The air inhaled through the oral cavity enters the oropharynx, and then the inhaled air then descends into the laryngopharynx, where it is diverted into the opening of the larynx by the epiglottis. So that's the movement of the air into the pharynx. Next is the larynx. Larynx is located at the anterior portion of the neck. It is also the body's voice box as it contains the vocal folds that produce the sounds of speech and singing. There are several cartilage structures that make up the larynx. First is the epiglottis that serves as the cover of the larynx during swallowing. And inferior to the epiglottis is the thyroid cartilage, also referred as the Adam's apple, and it protects the vocal folds. Then inferior to the thyroid cartilage is the cricoid cartilage. It is a ring shape that surrounds the trachea. It holds the opening of the larynx and supports its posterior end. And larynx also have a vocal folds. So when we say vocal folds, these are folds of mucous membrane that vibrate to produce vocal sounds. So that's the larynx all about. Let's now proceed to the trachea, which is already part of the lower respiratory tract. Trachea is also known as windpipe. It is a wide, hollow tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs. So trachea provides air passage to your lungs for respiration, to inhale air rich in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. So trachea contains C-shaped cartilaginous rings that prevent it from collapsing or prevent the trachea from collapsing, and they keep the trachea open for air to come in and out. And it has also called epithelium lining. It produces a sticky mucus lining that traps foreign substances and prevents it from reaching the lungs. So these trapped substances are expelled upwards and can either be excreted from the body as a phlegm. So trachea also acts as thermoregulation. So when the air is cold, the trachea helps to humidify and warm the air entering the lungs. And when the air is hot, heat is carried away in exhaled air through evaporation of the water. So that's the function of the trachea. Let's now talk about the bronchi and the bronchioles. So the main function of these two is to carry the air from the trachea into the lungs. The smooth muscle in the bronchioles regulates the airflow into the lungs. So when the body needs a greater volume of air, such as during exercising, the smooth muscles relaxes to dilate the bronchi and the bronchioles. And the cartilage in the bronchi prevents the collapsing of the bronchi during inhalation and exhalation. So the bronchi and the bronchioles has a cilia, or the hair-like projections that move microbes and debris up and out of the airways to allow more air to pass into and out of the lungs. So that's the bronchi and bronchioles all about. And the last part of the respiratory system are the lungs. So when we say lungs, these are a pair of spongy, air-filled organs located on either side of the chest. The main function of the lungs is to process the process of gas exchange called respiration. So when we say respiration is the term for the exchange of oxygen from the environment for carbon dioxide from the body's cell. In the respiration, oxygen from incoming air enters the blood and the carbon dioxide leaves the blood. A reduced lung function means that the ability of the lungs to exchange gases is reduced. So in the lungs, there are this thing called alveoli. Alveoli is a tiny balloon-shaped air sacs, which can be found at the end point of the respiratory system. So these are the smallest passageway of the respiratory system where exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs. and the alveoli are lined by a fluid layer known as the surfactant. The surfactant maintains the shape and surface of the air sac or the alveoli. So those are the parts of the respiratory system. So we're already done with the function and parts of the respiratory system. Let's have a review. So the respiratory system is responsible for taking in the oxygen, which is called the inspiration, and expelling the carbon dioxide, or what we call the expiration. Each part is divided into two. These are the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. For the upper, it consists the nose and nasal cavity, the pharynx, and the larynx. And for the lower respiratory tract, it contains the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles, and the lungs, which is the main organs of the respiratory system. Now, let's move on to the respiratory cycle. So this is the relaxed state of the external intercostal and the diaphragm. So when we say intercostals, these are the muscles that that run between the ribs and help form and move the chest wall. And when we say diaphragm, this is located below the lungs. This is the major muscle of respiration. It is a large dome-shaped muscle that contracts rhythmically and continually, and most of the time involuntarily. So upon inhalation, the diaphragm contracts and flattens and the chest cavity enlarges. So this is the relaxed state of it. And this is the inspiration. So when the air flows in, the ribs move upward and outward due to muscle contraction, and the lung volume increases, causing air pressure to fall, and the diaphragm contracts and flattens, moving downwards. And for this is for the expiration. So when the air flows up, the ribs return to resting position. The lung volume decreases, causing air pressure to rise, and the diaphragm relaxes. So this is the respiratory cycle. Let's now move on to the four respiration processes. First is the pulmonary ventilation or breathing. So this is all about inspiration and expiration in response to changes of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. Second one is the external respiration. This is all about the exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide between alveoli or blood in the pulmonary capillaries. Third is the transport of respiratory gases. It occurs when blood transports carbon dioxide to the lungs and oxygen to the body cells. And the fourth or last is the internal respiration, which is all about exchange of oxygen or carbon dioxide between body cells and blood in the body capillaries. So those are the four respiration processes of the respiratory system. We are already done talking with the function and parts of the respiratory system, its cycle, and the four processes. Now let's move on to the diseases of the respiratory system. So the first common disease of the respiratory system is the pneumonia. Pneumonia is a disease in which some of the alveoli of the lungs fill with fluids so the gas exchange cannot occur. The infections can be bacterial, viral, or fungal. Most people can recover in 1 to 3 weeks, but for certain people, pneumonia can be extremely serious and even life-threatening. Pneumonia is caused by inhaling foreign matter or toxic substances into the lungs. Symptoms: coughing, chest pain, and difficulty in breathing. Next is the asthma. Asthma is an inflammation and tightening the muscles of the lung airways. It causes wheezing, chest tightening, shortness of breath, and cough that often brings up mucus or phlegm. So it happens when a person was exposed to various irritants and substances such as airborne substances, air pollution, and cold air. And third one is the emphysema, which occurs when the walls of the alveoli break down so less gas can be exchanged in the lungs. So when you exhale, the damaged alveoli don't work properly and the old air becomes trapped, leaving no room for fresh, oxygen-rich air to enter. This causes shortness of breath. So, emphysema is caused by smoking and irreversible. So, means it is impossible to change back to a previous condition. So, the last common disease of the respiratory system is the lung cancer. It is often associated with smoking and can affect non-smokers as well. It is caused by uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells. So, as these abnormal cells grow, it can form tumors and interfere with the functioning of the lungs. Symptoms: a cough that does not go away or gets worse, coughing up blood or rust-colored known as the phlegm, chest pain that is often worse with deep breathing, coughing, or laughing. So, that's the lung cancer all about. So, those are just the common symptoms or those are the common diseases of the respiratory system. So after the diseases, let's now talk about on how to take care of our respiratory system. Number one, avoid tobacco exposure. So quit smoking. This is the most effective way to keep your respiratory system healthy. If you are not a smoker, be aware of the effects of inhaling secondhand smoke. Second, reduce fatty food intake and keep a balanced diet. Third, limit exposure to common allergens. Fourth, maintain high standards of hygiene. Fifth, follow an exercise routine. Stay hydrated, okay, to help you flush any toxins of your respiratory system. Reduce your alcohol intake and utilize steam inhalation and vaporization. So those are the things that we need to remember for us to keep safe or to take care of our respiratory system.
I hope you understood the lesson and I hope you learned a lot from it. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.